Good morning, Galaxians, and welcome to another live edition of the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. My name is Ryan, and I'm going to be your host. We've got a couple of things that I want to cover today. Initially, it was going to be just one, and it was going to be about seller fees and some of the sites that are making changes to how they handle seller fees and what that might mean for some of the other sites going forward. But in the meantime, there have been some things going on with shipping, and I've seen a few videos where people are talking about this potentially as a glitch, particularly over on eBay. And I had one viewer, listener reach out to me asking about this and if I had seen anything like it. And I ship mostly by media mail, so I had not seen anything really about this other than a few videos about it. So I decided yesterday I would do some digging, and I think I've figured out what's going on here, and I'm going to show you why I don't think this is actually a glitch. But before we get into that, I do want to say some good mornings to some folks who are here in the chat. Lord Jake Ryan, first, again, thank you for coming out. Big Dre, welcome to the show. Hello there, and hello to everyone who is here but not yet in the chat. So let's get into this shipping thing and what I think is actually going on here. So I've got up on the screen here the most recent USPS Ground Advantage Retail Parcel Rate Table. That is a mouthful, but I want to take a look at it. So it used to be that the rates were, if the weight was not over 4 ounces, 8 ounces, 12 ounces, and then 1 pound, 16 ounces. And you could pretty much count on if an item was between 12.1 and 16 ounces, you could just put it in at whatever you wanted. I saw a couple of videos where guys were saying I didn't pay any attention to the actual weight. If it was 14 ounces or 15 ounces, I just put it in as 16 ounces because I knew it was going to be the same. But that trick no longer works. And a lot of folks are pointing to it as some kind of a glitch, some kind of problem with, particularly with eBay. And I think it goes back to a video I did a couple of weeks ago where I talked about a stealthy USPS price increase, where what they did was they didn't change the rates. The retail rates have not changed, but they were changing the level of discount that third-party shippers could provide to you. So eBay, Pirate Ship, ShipStation, and companies like that. And in this most recent rate table, I found something that kind of points to how they have even magnified that stealthiness just a little bit further. So if we look at this, you see what we used to have. You've got the 4 ounce, you've got the 8 ounce, you've got the 12 ounce. But then before you get to actual 1 pound to 16 ounces, you've got this random 15.999 ounces thing. And as you go across, you see that the retail rates are, as they promised, unchanged because that's still technically under 1 pound, right? So regardless of the zone that you choose, it's the same at 15.99 versus at 16. So why would they do that? So let's take a look at this. So I'm on Pirate Ship, and I've just created kind of a single shipment to kind of illustrate what I think is going on here. So here we've got a package, 12 by 9, and we're going to put in, let's just do 12 ounces just to see if that rate looks right. So we'll go back here and generate a rate at 12 ounces. And it says Ground Advantage. It says the retail rate is $6.50 for zone 1, but the discounted rate is $4.87. So if we go back here and we look at this 12 ounce rate, that looks right. So, okay, that looks good. So let's go back and update it. Let's try 15 ounces just to see what it does. And we go to 15. And get the rate again. And you wait a little bit for it to calculate. And here again, we've got Ground Advantage, and it correctly shows that the retail rate at 15 ounces is $8, but it shows my discounted rate here at $5.52. So again, that seems to be correct. Let's go back. Let's do it at 16 ounces, because this is what a lot of sellers talk about they have been doing. 15 and 16 used to be exactly the same. So if we put 16 in here now and we get the rate, you will see that Ground Advantage still shows the retail rate correctly at $8, but our actual discounted rate has gone to $5.73. It has gone up. why is that the case? So let's go back one more time and I'm going to do something. So pirate ship allows you to do something. Whoops, I don't want to do that. Let's do another one here. That eBay does not allow you to do. So you can put in a out to 2 decimal points weight. So let's change this package and let's do 15.99 because remember the max was 15.999. So if I do 15.99, what rate am I going to get? Oh, it deleted all my stuff. Sorry about that. Let's go back in here. I use myself and my old address. Oops, that's not going to work. All right, that's my old address. So now I'm at 15.99 and it has dropped back down to 552. So what has happened here is, again, you can't prove this because these third-party shipping companies are not allowed to publish their rates, their rate tables, or their discount levels. But they did say that those discounts were going to change. And I think what has happened here is with this new funky 15.999 ounce rate, what has happened is that anything above that is the Postal Service has lowered the discount that's available to these third-party shippers. So on eBay, where you can't put in a fractional weight, if it's 15.1, you've got to put it in as 16 because it's a weight not over a particular amount, and you're over 15. So you put in 16 and it goes to this new 1 pound or 15.999 rate. But if you're at 15.9 or anything up to 15.998, if you can go out to 3 decimal points or probably even 99, it's going to generate a lower price with the discount than it will for that 1/1000th of a penny difference. So just another reason that I use Pirate Ship for most of my shipping. Now, again, I ship mostly media mail. This is unlikely probably to come up for me. But if you do a lot of, say, 12 plus to 12 ounces plus to 1 pound rate ground advantage shipping, Pirate Ship is going to save you a little bit of money. It's not a ton of money, but it adds up over time. And it certainly explains why people are seeing this random increase in the price. It's because the discount level has changed at that fractional shipping. So if you're shipping that way and you're using eBay, you might want to consider looking at one of these third-party shippers. Again, ShipStation, Pirate Ship, somebody that allows you to put in your weights by more than no decimal points. So it's not a round number, 15 ounces to 16 ounces. If you can put in even 15.9, you're going to be ahead of the game on this. Pirate Ship, again, allows 2 decimal points, so you can get all the way out to 15.99, which is about as close as you can get. And that will allow you to save a little bit of money over there. So that's just, it was bothering me that I couldn't figure out just right off the cuff what was going on here. And I think it goes back to that rate change in the level of discount that UPS is doing. Operating on eBay, speaking of shipping, I learned that I shouldn't just listen to your news, but should pay attention. My buyer purchased on Saturday, and I waited to Sunday to purchase the label at the higher cost. Yep, I had a lot of that as well because I don't ship on Saturday afternoon. So anything that comes in prior to like 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, I go ahead and ship that day. But anything that came in after that, I did not do labels that day. I take Saturday afternoons off. So I had probably 7 or 8 shipments that I paid a few extra or 50 extra cents on because I didn't actually process the shipping labels until Monday morning when the rate increase had gone into effect. So that's another place where they catch you. I feel like they know that most people are not going to do shipping labels on Sunday. So they implement these on Sunday and we go in on Monday and we end up paying extra to the post office for all those orders. Another stealthy little way to make a little bit of extra money. Donuts are us. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Thanks for coming out. So, the other thing that I wanted to talk about today was some of the changes in selling fees. So, I posted this over on Instagram, shameless plug at Galaxy CDs Rocks. Back on Monday when this came out, this article is on Value Added Resource. The graphic I posted was actually from Depop itself, but Depop has expanded no selling fees to the U.S. market as pre-loved clothing competition heats up. Etsy-owned fashion marketplace Depop, if you weren't aware of that, Depop is owned by Etsy, which makes me wonder what Etsy might be doing in the future as well, is moving full speed ahead with a new fee structure, expanding no selling fees to the U.S. market after similar changes in the U.K. earlier this year. That is great news for sellers on Depop. As of July 15th, 2024, U.S. sellers will no longer be charged a 10% commission on Depop sales, though importantly, the 3.3% plus 45-cent payment processing fee will still apply. So you're not completely off the hook. You are, as a business owner, still responsible for the credit card piece of this, the 3.3 plus 45 cents, but the 10% commission or final value fee, whatever you want to call it, that has gone away. This policy is effective from 15 July 2024, and it forms part of their new updated, of course, terms of service. And they outline here essentially the same thing, what those fees are and which listings apply. If you are outside of the United States or the UK, you're still going to pay, at least for the time being, this commission rate. The notice that Depop sent to U.S. sellers also says now that buyers will now be charged a, quote, marketplace fee, unquote, of up to 5% plus a fixed amount up to $1. So they are essentially going to be charged, kind of like what Mercari is doing, a fee for the privilege of purchasing something. Over on Depop, it can be up to 5% plus a fixed amount up to $1. So they're kind of doing it in the same way as the payment processing fee. It's a percentage plus a fixed amount, although they're not clear on whether there are tiers or whether it's how they're going to calculate that. I don't know if this will add up to be roughly the same 10% that they were charging sellers. I know in a lot of cases over on Mercari, that has not been the case. The fees being charged to the potential buyer have been well less than what Mercari was charging us, which begs the question, not to get too cynical, but if they can afford to sell this stuff at a less of a commission charge to the buyer, why couldn't they just do that for us? But anyway, this is good news for sellers. I don't sell on Depop because I don't sell in fashion. I know Mercari, when they did this, they were really pushing their sellers to lower their prices, essentially to subsidize the price reduction, which kind of allows them to get that fee twice, essentially, because they're getting it from the buyer in that case. So let me know if you're a seller on Depop. Have you seen anything like that? Because I have not found anything that indicates to me that they're doing that. But the announcement said, we're changing our fees. We've permanently removed our selling fees from all new listings in the U.S., which means you can now make even more money on Depop. We're also introducing a new marketplace fee for buyers from July 18th, so there is a couple-day window there. This fee will help us to invest in Depop protection, customer support, platform improvements, and growing our community. So kind of pointing to the same things that Mercari tried to do when they implemented this. There, what at the time was an updated returns policy that allowed returns for any reasons, which ultimately they had to backtrack on. So it'll be interesting to see if Depop is able to continue to offer this same thing. The marketplace fee will again be up to 5% of the item sale price, plus a fixed amount of up to $1. It will help us deliver a broader, more balanced, and accessible platform for both buyers and sellers. You'll find more details about the changes in the updated terms of service. Just tap the Learn button below. And that is if you got this email. It's valid on new listings from July 15th. Payment processing fees still apply. Now, importantly, they say it's only on new listings. I don't know. Again, I don't sell on Depop. If you go in and edit your listings and update them, or if they have the equivalent of a delist sell similar, does that count as a new listing? And would that allow you to get all of your old listings into this new fee structure? This article points out this update comes at a time when Etsy is under increasing pressure from activist investor Elliott Management to make their house of brand strategy with Depop and Reverb pay off. Etsy CEO Josh Silverman previously worked at eBay and has been accused on more than one occasion of liberally borrowing from his old employer's playbook, so it's not particularly surprising that both companies have been dancing around this same strategy. They note that eBay initially tested also no selling fees for private, non-business sellers in the UK, and then ultimately went permanently fee-free for private sellers in that region starting in April. So that is also really interesting. Will eBay, and that's kind of the crux of, I guess, the rest of this conversation that I want to have with all of you today, is eBay potentially going to do that as well? Will they eliminate fees for anyone in the US and Canada markets in particular, or will they do it just for private sellers? And how do they police that? How do they keep you from creating multiple accounts? So obviously, to qualify as a private seller, I would assume there's going to be some kind of cap on the amount of sales that you can do, the amount of listings that you can have, and that anything above that would be considered a quote unquote business or professional seller. But they'll have to have some way to monitor people coming in and out, creating multiple accounts. There was an article today that I'm not going to get into this morning about some changes to eBay's terms of service in terms of how they identify you, which may be part of this kind of move towards that, where they want a lot more information about who you are and to be able to verify that information before they allow you to open an account, which may hinder people from opening these multiple accounts. This is all speculation, of course, on my part, but you look at, I don't think, obviously, Amazon is never going to go fee-free for sellers. They are the biggest marketplace in the world. They don't need to do that. There's no want for sellers or buyers on their marketplace. I can't imagine in any scenario where Amazon would do that. eBay, I can see maybe doing it with these so-called private non-business sellers to try to attract additional sellers into the marketplace that are now being enticed by these smaller sites, Mercari and Depop, that are going fee-free for sellers. I'm curious what some of the other kind of smaller and mid-tier platforms, somebody like Poshmark, might do with fees. I know a lot of sellers feel like Poshmark's fees are really high. What will they do in response to, in particular, to Depop, who is kind of in that same kind of operating window? Getting back into the chat here, Liz O'Kane, good morning. Turning on our morning walk. Good, thank you, and nice to get out and walk. It's going to rain here all day today, so I'm going to miss my walk for the first time in like 2 weeks, I think. Kaylee Debs, good morning to Ryan and the chat. Good morning, welcome. LR333, that is a fee reduction. Yes, that is terrific news for anybody that sells on Depop, and again, potentially more broadly for anyone who sells anywhere, because I would feel like a lot of these smaller and mid-sized platforms are going to have to compete with those kind of changes. Liz O'Kane says, I did delist, relist from third-party tool. From what I saw, Depop hasn't given a relist tool like Mercari did. Fair enough. So that will be interesting to see. Having it available only on new listings, if I was a seller, unless I had, like I currently do, 11,000 listings, I would probably unlist everything. I would take the time to save 10%. That's a pretty good reduction. I'd probably delist and relist everything. Liz says, I see eBay doing it. I do too. I can't. Oh, no, you say I don't see eBay doing it. I don't know. I don't see them doing it broadly. Business sellers, there's too much money to be made. There's too many connections with promoted listings, general promoted listings, premium, offsite ads, all of those things to get sellers. And not to be too whatever, eBay's track record as a quote unquote top tier technology company in parsing out like different methods of tracking things is not all that strong. So how do you even separate private sellers, like I said, from business sellers in that scenario? I think that's a pretty tall ask for them, but I can see where they might be interested in doing it. It's going to be a question really of implementation. Liz O'Kane, in order to register, you have to provide a social or employee identification number, right? I would assume that is the case. I didn't have time this morning to dive right into it. One of the big things was that they wanted, again, your state issued identification number and the right to verify that, as along with, I think, verification of bank account information. So some interesting stuff that I will probably cover more in depth on Monday's podcast. So stay tuned for that. A net excess package. I think eliminating selling fees is smart because it makes selling more enticing to people who were previously reticent. More market share for the platform. Absolutely. It puts them in a position where they can, again, attract those casual sellers, exactly what Mercari was trying to do. They want everybody. Mercari's trying to get professional sellers. Their recent promotion, I'd be curious how that went for them. I was talking about it quite a bit. I didn't have anybody who used my affiliate link to sign up to go to Mercari, so I would be curious how many sellers they did get through that pro seller program that they were running. But all of these sites are now competing, not all of them, but most of them, and I would assume an ever increasing number of them, are going to be competing for these casual sellers, people who are not, they're not doing it as their main gig. It may not even necessarily be a side hustle. It's something they've cleaned out their closet and they got some random stuff they want to get rid of, but they don't want to pay somebody to get rid of it. Why would you put it on eBay now or Poshmark and pay the fee if you could put it on Mercari and Depop and not have to worry about paying a fee? I think this is a wonderful decision for those firms and will probably lead to a lot more sellers there. I only have about 250 on Depop, so it was quick and easy, says Liz, who adds, it's really an interesting time to be in reselling, seeing more than one platform turning away from seller fees. Yeah, it is fascinating. These companies obviously have all relied on ever increasing selling fees. And again, not to pile on eBay, but more and more ways to generate fees through advertising and promotional programs that if you don't participate in, you run a risk of being pushed further and further down in the search results. So you almost have to pay to play. And on the flip side, now you've got these smaller and mid-sized platforms that are just saying, you know what, let's turn the tables on this and try to attract sellers by moving those fees over to the buyer. Obviously, there was a fairly significant backlash at Mercari about that, with lots of cart abandonment, and they have implemented some changes trying to fix that issue. Again, it'll be interesting to see on Depop if this fee is 5% plus a buck. Does that work out to less than the 10% that they were charging sellers? And are buyers okay paying whatever it might be, an extra $2 or $3 to the platform to be able to make a purchase there? It's really interesting. Liz adds, I also wonder, Mercari, Depop are international sites that recently came to the U.S. market. I wonder if they're using international statistics to make these changes. That is true. I don't know, particularly in the case of Mercari, what kind of data they were looking at in order to make that decision. At the time it was announced, I was pretty incredulous, if I'm being completely honest. I didn't quite get it. I'm not sure I totally do now. And again, the idea that these fees that are going to be applied to buyers are lower than what was being applied to sellers also kind of gets my radar turned on. Don't stress, I wanted to make eBay my number one site, but the fees are off-putting. I'm focusing more on, I assume you mean Depop here. I don't want to have to pay for promotions. That is true. That I get accused of this quite a bit with my reticence of listing on Amazon. eBay is such a big platform. They have so many buyers. They do so much business. I know the fees are high, but it's hard to not use them. When I look at my business, which I analyze on a weekly basis, I'll go in and I'll look at my P&L based on the week's sales, what I spent in ad fees and promotional fees and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, eBay is still, in most weeks, 75 to 80% of my sales. And I can't just write that off. I don't like paying on average 20% of sales, including all the promotional fees, in order to do business there. But I couldn't afford to not be there. And that's a decision all of us as business owners have to make. How much are we willing to pay to play on these sites? And particularly very new sellers who see fees and then additional, oh, you got to promote, you don't have to, but you probably need to. And we've also got this offsite ad program and all this stuff. Number one, it's just daunting to kind of wade through what all of those fees are, what they might mean to your business or to your bottom line, or how much money you're going to make. And old sellers who have been around since the days where the fees were super, super low and didn't apply to shipping and so on and so forth. Every time we turn around, there's a new program, there's a new fee. Fees have increased multiple times. I think it's going to be increasingly difficult, on a side note, for platforms who still want to charge sellers fees to continue to increase those fees when you've got sites now that are eliminating them for sellers altogether. That is going to be a bit of a challenge, I would think. Liz O'Kane, Depop has their version of promoted listings. Poshmark does too. I would imagine everyone has something like that to try to generate a little bit of extra revenue. Again, they're all publicly held company trying to make money to satisfy shareholders and all the rest of that. So any bit that they can squeeze, in particular, in this case, sellers, to pay to get their listings seen. And as business owners, advertising is part of the game. We've all had to budget for that. When I owned an actual brick and mortar store, I was spending money on advertising every month, running ads in the newspaper. I ran radio ads. I spent a lot of money on ads. And I always view these fees and the promotional fees as part of that advertising spend. Rather than sending it to the local newspaper or the local radio station, I'm sending it to eBay, who now advertises my wares internationally. So it's 6 of one, half dozen the other for me. I understand why they do it, and I understand why I, as a business owner, probably need to do it. Excess Baggage says, I recently sold items on eBay in beauty and home categories. My fee percentage was 14.5%. Roughly, if I promoted or paid for a store, the overhead would be the same or very close to 20% like Poshmark. So there you go. There's a comparison from someone who has done both. I've not sold anything on Poshmark. I just hear anecdotally that the fees at 20% seem a little high. But like I said, in my case, even on eBay, with the amount of stuff that I sell that goes through the now promoted listings general category, my average fee paid is right just under 20%, even though the actual fee on most of the stuff I sell is only 13.9% or whatever it is. So there's a huge, huge jump when you start factoring in all those other fees and programs. Big Dre, I've been selling on Depop since August of last year, only sold 3 items. I only recently learned that keywords are crucial to sell items there, so I will add them since I'm going to delist and relist. Yep, all of these platforms, eBay probably is the most difficult, have their, whatever you want to call it, their quirks or their things that you need to know to be successful on their platform. And again, I don't sell on Depop because I'm not a fashion seller. But you've got to, it's a learning curve like anything else. You've got to figure out what makes that platform tick and what you need to do as a seller to make sure your items are getting seen. And that is a big one. That's another one that I heard a couple of sellers in some of the message boards I was in had similar feelings that Depop just wasn't generating a ton of business, which is my case, as I talk about pretty regularly with Mercari. I don't sell a ton of stuff over there. In most weeks, it's 1, 2, maybe 3 items a week. But over the course of a year, if I sell an average of 4 items a week, that's a couple hundred items a year at an average of 15 or 18 bucks. It's not inconsequential money. So it's probably worth doing unless it's really cumbersome to do, which I don't think it is. Most of the cross-listing platforms have Depop available. So Excess Package, eBay has a lot of gall to ask people to pay to play when they're already rapidly losing market share. And that's going to be interesting too. That's why I'm interested in how they approach all of these smaller companies that are kind of nibbling at their heels and now not only taking market share in terms of buyers, but potentially taking market share of sellers, taking inventory off of that marketplace and moving it to Mercari or moving it to Depop and avoiding paying the higher fees and all of that eBay does. And how do they counter that? One of the ways, obviously, is to talk about the fact that they're arguably one of the biggest marketplaces. They have the most buyers and so on. But those numbers have consistently been dropping over the last 3 years. if you play along here very often, you know when I do the quarterly reports, the best eBay has performed over the last few years is flat. They have not had growth. They have typically had decline. So they got some sorting out to do on top of all the other various problems that we won't get into today that are going on over at eBay. Liz O'Kane, yep, agree with all that. Pay to play. It's a very individual choice based on your business model. Yep. I talk about that all the time. You, as a business owner, get to make decisions on what's best for your business and what kinds of levels of work and drama and heartache you're willing to go through to play on some of these platforms. I was listening to a podcast on Monday, some people talking about booksellers, media sellers generally, and they were just so negative on people that do not sell on Amazon. The whole show was about, if you are a media seller on eBay, you're not doing it right. You're wasting your time. You're wrong. It's too much effort for too little reward. And I'm sitting here packing 30 some orders of stuff that I had sold on eBay over the weekend. And I'm thinking to myself, hey, what research did you do to come to that conclusion? So again, as I always say, be careful where you get your advice and who you listen to when you're, kind of watching YouTube or listening to podcasts, because what works for me may not work for you. And you need to make those decisions on your own. By all means, listen to as many sources as possible. But at the end of the day, we individually get to make those decisions, how we want to run our businesses, the platforms we choose to sell on, whether we choose to promote or use offsite ads or whatever the case may be. That is all. It's one of the beauties of reselling. You get to make those choices. So I'll get off my soapbox a little bit on that. Liz, yeah, 20% on Posh is just for the item price, not the shipping or sales tax or promoted fees. Still a low flat rate shipping process for buyers. It's my second best platform. So there you go. These other companies all charge. I talk about Etsy's 15% offsite ad fee. They charge that fee on shipping. If you get an international order, that shipping is $30 or $35 or $40, and your item is, say, a $20 item, it gets really difficult to make money because now they're charging 15% on what amounts to a $50 or $60 order, and you've just eaten up all of your profit. So it can be very, very tough. So knowing that they only apply that fee to the item is helpful. Then Decor Depot, good morning, a bit late, and I'll catch up. Thanks for coming out. Ms. Lachey, good morning. Thanks for coming out. Then Decor, Etsy's 15% marketing is the biggest scam, but yeah, it's something we just have to roll into cost of goods sold. Yeah, it is one of those things. I said it before. I get sales through it that maybe I would not have ordinarily gotten. So is it worth doing? Yes. Do I think 15% is really excessive? Yes. I've talked about on eBay, my promoted listings general program, I have capped at like 7%. But interestingly, I did do an experiment this past week also on that. I raised mine for the week to 8%. So every day I go in and I do my listings from yesterday and I add them to my promotional campaign. And every day when I go in, my cap was at 7%, and it would show me eBay's recommended percentage. And it was usually 7.4 or 7.5% to something else. Some days it would be a little higher than that, but a lot of times I was getting a recommendation of 7.4 or 7.5% as what I should use as my rate cap. So I decided for a week I was going to try it at 8%. I was going to go over what that kind of minimum recommended number I saw was to see, number one, did it have any impact on my business? The answer was no. And number two, just to see what on the next morning when I went in to promote my items, what eBay now recommended. Are they really recommending a rate based on what other sellers are using to promote? Or are they doing it based on what you've already set as your cap? And I can't prove this 100%. But every day since I changed my percentage to 8, it has recommended 8.5 or higher. It's no longer showing me that the rate range is in that sub 8, 7.4, 7.5. Suddenly, without warning, I've changed my maximum cap, and the recommendation I'm getting from eBay is now even higher. That also gets my radar going. I've wondered for a long, long time what that recommendation is based on, and that's just a little not scientific experiment, but it's as close as you can get as a seller to doing one. And at least in this first week, my experience has been they're recommending a rate even higher than they were before. Big Dre, maybe you should debate the used book guy. It would make for a good episode. That is exactly who I was listening to. They were really going off this week. Donuts Russ, some big eBay sellers said eventually we'll get to a point where it won't be worth it to sell some items online, like $12 shirts. And I've seen a lot of sellers talking about this as well. It's very difficult now to sell low dollar items, even in my category, which is books. I've got a lot of books that they're just not worth a ton of money. They're $4.99 type books. And with all the price increases in shipping, it now costs in many cases more to ship this book than the price of the book, which as a buyer probably is a potential turnoff, number one. And number two, it starts to make the fee structure really difficult because you've planned on whatever, $4.99 plus $4.67 in shipping, and now that shipping cost is up to $5.38, plus the taxes have gone up and they charge additional fees on the tax increase as well. So all of a sudden, that fee number has gotten to be really eroding your profit, which is going to make it very, very hard on lower value items, particularly if you're trying to do free shipping. It's very tough. The Old Man's Picks, welcome. Do you know if there's a way on eBay to pass along your discounted shipping on only selected listings? I don't believe that there is. I won't swear to that. It strikes me that it's a global setting that you go into in your shipping preferences. I guess if you manually put in a shipping amount rather than doing calculated shipping and let it do its own calculation, you might be able to do it that way. But I think with the calculated shipping automatic, it's a global. If you know for sure and you're in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong on that. But when I went in to look at it, it's in your shipping preferences, and it's just that there's two check boxes, pass it along or don't. So I don't believe you can do that. Miss Lachey resells. The fact is both platforms can work for different people for different reasons, even Whatnot. Yes, and that was another one they were talking about, that they just didn't think Whatnot was worth doing. It's, again, for my business, it's not a platform that I want to spend a significant or really any amount of time on. It would be a way to get rid of some duds, some low value stuff, but I have other options that are quicker and easier. If I wanted to do like a show like this, a really participatory, let's talk about old sci-fi books and do a bunch of dollar science fiction books, then maybe that would be different. Maybe it would work for me. But with how I'm trying to run my business currently, I can't make Whatnot work. But I know a lot of sellers who love it, who are doing tons of business over there and are quite successful. So then Decor Depot, media final value fees are also higher. I just sent a seal VHS PA to Kentucky, cheaper versus Ground Advantage versus Media Mail. Yes, and I talked about that when they announced the Media Mail price increase that just went into effect on Sunday. I said that it was going to change a lot of people's shipping. Ground Advantage was going to be super, super competitive in a lot of weight and zone categories. I had a similar one today. I had an item that was under 8 ounces that was going to zone 2, and it was significantly cheaper with Ground Advantage than it was to use Media Mail. And I mean, like, significantly, like $1 less. So yes, it is definitely the case. And there are some higher weights that is also the case for. I had another one today that was a 7-pound box, 2 old books. I think it was 7 pounds and some change. And I could actually ship it using Pirate Ship priority rate cubic for about $5 less than what Media Mail would have been. So I have conjectured here a couple of times on this channel, and I was talking to my friend Katie Reeds about it on her Instagram yesterday. I am not confident that media mail shipping is going to be available from the Postal Service for the long-term future. The convergence of the pricing, you have so many instances now where Ground Advantage or even Priority ends up being cheaper. I feel like they haven't said it, but I feel like it is almost an effort to make it so uncompetitive that when they announce that they're just going to phase it out, nobody bats an eye. Net net, it probably will work out even if they do that. The more distant zones are still more expensive on Ground Advantage, but you can save so much closer to home that on balance, it's probably a wash. So that's going to be really interesting to watch. Then to core global setting, and it discounts non-discounted rates as well as media and standard envelope. And it discounts non-discounted rates. I haven't seen that. I don't pass that along. The non-discounted rates like media mail, I don't see any changes on when I do anything like on Pirate Ship or wherever. It's the rate is the rate is the rate. So I've not seen that, but that is interesting. I don't use standard envelope either, though I know the prices also went up on that. So you have to set up a business policy to get close to the difference if you pass discounts. Yeah, and I think I've seen a lot of people argue back and forth about the usefulness of business policies. I love them because I'm a high volume, high inventory level seller. So the ability to go in globally and quickly make a change to a business policy and have it affect 8 or 9 or 10,000 listings is almost a must for me. But I can see why a lot of smaller sellers don't want to mess with them. They can be very confusing. eBay has a habit from time to time of changing your business policies without letting you know. I at one point had 3 pages worth of random business policies that eBay had generated for some reason. So it's one more thing you got to keep an eye on. Cubic rates are better than media rates for a lot of the US now. Yeah, I think with the exception of the most distant zones, anything reasonably close to you is going to be cheaper to do cubic, Ground Advantage, or even Priority. I brought the eBay discount up on the eBay for Business pod, and they answered it like 5 or 6 weeks ago. So what did they say? That they think you should pass it along? What was their advice on it? Again, like I've talked about, I feel like in the rare instances where I ship that way, it is a way to help to account for the fact, number one, that I'm paying fees, and number two, that they're charging fees on all that stuff. So I'm already, if I'm passing that along, I'm losing money on not only the shipping, but I've still got to pay for all my supplies, my boxes, my bubble mailers, and all that. Again, there's a part of me that says that's part of the cost of doing business, but if I can recoup a little bit of that by charging retail counter rate and paying a discounted rate that I qualify for as a business owner, for my business, I feel like that is the decision that I want to make. So you can let me know what you think of any of that. With that, we've got a quick pause here. I'm going to take a quick drink. You don't realize how thirsty you get talking for like 45 minutes in a row until you try to do it. Man, that is a lot. So that kind of sums up what's going on with shipping and with these fees. Please feel free. Like I said, we're at about the 45-minute mark, so I got about 15 minutes left here. If you have anything else you would like to talk about or further thoughts on any of these topics, I would be very interested to have that further discussion. Just a quick programming note. If one dose of me is not enough for you this morning, I will be appearing on, I believe it's on Fundamentals, Derek's channel on the Hump Day Hangout tonight, which is at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern. So if you're not doing anything tonight, hop on YouTube and find Derek Fundamentals and look for the Hump Day Hangout. I will be there. That show usually runs from 9 to about 10 o'clock. We'll have a pretty wide-ranging discussion. It won't all be probably reselling related. That show, they talk about all kinds of different stuff. Always a good time. It's a good crowd in the room, in the chat. So if you're not doing anything tonight, come join me over there as well. The eBay discount is global, including media mail. They recommend to be competitive. Well, of course they do, but I do a 15% because I use Pirate Ship for nearly everything. And yeah, I'm the same. I use Pirate Ship for, again, like I talked about, I sell on multiple platforms. Most days I've got shipments from 2 or maybe 3 different places, and I don't want to take 3 different scan sheets in or have a random 1 or 2 items that need to be scanned and everything else is on the sheet. I want to be able to get in and get out. So I use Pirate Ship. Now we have one more reason to use it, because you get that 2 decimal point weight thing under a pound, and you can save yourself a little bit of money there as well. But I built business policies for eBay standard envelope and media mail, which I gave to fix again. I assume you mean have to fix again. Yes, they get altered. The rates change. If you have like flat rate shipping, if you have designated that at certain policies, certain prices apply every time they make a rate change, you have to make adjustments to your policies or to your shipping amounts. It's one of the reasons that I got away from free shipping and why I went to calculated shipping, customer pays. That way, when there is a change, my listings automatically update to whatever the new rate is. And again, I'm on the hook for whatever the difference is in the fees, but I'm not paying for the rate increase per se. Kathy Eller, I sell on Depop and don't sell clothing. I sell items that don't even have a category to put them in. What kind of stuff do you sell over there? I'd just be curious how that works. How do you classify them and put them into a category? Do they have like an other, or how do they do that? Again, I don't sell there, so I'm not that familiar with how that's set up. Busy Girl, I've been off eBay for a while. Are they offering cubic shipping now? Yes, they do. I only checked this morning the stuff to kind of do this episode. So this price range of the 15 to 16 ounces. When I had looked previously, recently, the rates were essentially identical in most cases to what was available on Pirate Ship. So they are using those rates. I don't know if that changes as you get out further into the weights or the sizes, but what I've found personally is that they are offering that cubic rate. Big Dre, I got an eBay message about a business cash advance, a new financing option offered by Liberis. Any thoughts on this? I believe it takes a percentage of your profits to pay back the loan. I talked about that on an episode a couple of weeks ago. So Liberis is a company based in the UK. They generally have worked with traditional brick and mortar retailers who accept credit card payments, and they arrange to take a portion of your credit card receipts in order to pay back the loan. My understanding is that it is a flat percentage. There's no quote unquote interest. There's no minimum repayment. There's not even a payment necessarily required, but that they deduct a certain agreed upon percentage of your eBay receipts on, I assume, a daily basis to recoup that amount. I could not get a really clear answer on what that flat fee was. It looked like it could be up to, I think the range I found was 1.15 to 1.38 money factor of whatever amount you bought, which equates to 15 to 30% up front. Again, they deduct it from your eBay receipts, so you're not paying it back. You're not cutting a check once a month for a traditional monthly payment. It is technically not, my understanding at least is, it's technically not a loan. It's a cash advance, like you mentioned. So the credit process to get applied for it is a little bit different. And you can set up your own kind of terms with how much you want to be deducted. I'm sure there's limits. You can't tell them probably 1%. I assume it's probably 10% or something like that of your gross receipts on a daily or weekly basis. And those, you do have to set up some kind of special financing option with eBay in order for them to deduct and move that money away from you to a third party. So it's a little bit of a complicated process, but if you're looking to get some money to go buy additional inventory or whatever going into Q4, it might be a good option for some people. Excess baggage. Would you ever try selling books on Depop? I don't know. Is that a thing? Can I do that? I've never looked into Depop other than to cover them for this podcast. So I don't know if they are in list perfectly as a site that I could very easily cross post to. Are there people selling books? If you're a bookseller, do you sell on Depop? Is that something that is a thing? And what's your success rate over there? I don't want to be whatever. It can't be any worse than Mercari, right? I'm going to have to look into that. That's a good tip. Thank you, Annette. Den Decor Depot. eBay supposedly does, but Pirate Ship has been cheaper in some cases. There you go. That is in reference to the cubic rate question, I believe. Donuts R Us. Something I'm seeing is bigger eBay sellers turning to wholesaling to other resellers. There is a lot of that. There are people. I was watching a video yesterday where someone was talking about sourcing on eBay to sell on eBay. I know Media Picker does that. He buys lots of CDs from other sellers on Facebook Marketplace or on eBay to then make either individual listings or smaller lots, and is able to do really well with that. If you've got a ton of, let's call it low value inventory, that might make sense. It's a good way to flip it and get out from under, a lot of 50 or 100 or whatever of an item, sell it to other resellers and get on with life. Use that money then to source the things that you really want to source. For someone like me, I could very easily do that. I do some lots where I'll buy like an estate buyout and I'll end up with 500 or 1,000 books, and there might be 50 or 60 that aren't worth selling individually. I could very easily build lots of those, maybe 3, 4, 5 books, maybe a wholesale lot of 40 or 50. I've done that with CDs in the past. I think I've still got a couple wholesale lots of like 30 CDs for like $12, just stuff that wasn't worth listing individually that I could sell to other resellers or flea market sellers that want to buy a bunch of stuff super cheap and go sell it. So yeah, it is definitely something that you could do. Busy Girl says, thank you. Excess baggage. Yes, I sell some books on here, especially vintage books. See, now you got me. Now I got something else to do today that I was not planning on doing. I'm going to have to look into Depop, especially since there's no fees now. That's a good deal. Are the buyers of Depop from 18 years to 25? Someone can answer that. There are currently 196,000 books listed on Depop. That doesn't sound like a lot, really. If I could move my probably 8,000 books over there, I'd probably be one of the biggest sellers on Depop. 186K, that's even better. That doesn't sound like a big number in the big scheme of things. A little seller like me, like I said, I've got 11,000 listings, probably 8,000 of which are books. I'm curious to go back to this question, if anybody knows. My understanding, if I remember correctly, is that the demographic of Depop does skew much younger than, say, Etsy, where I've had really good luck selling vintage books. I'm not sure how that translates, but it's something certainly worth looking into, as I've talked about here on numerous times. If I can get my listings in front of more people, whether that's through running an ad campaign or promoting listings or just getting cross-posted to more platforms, that is a win for me. Again, there's no fees. If I can do it easily and relatively seamlessly, I would absolutely consider doing that. Excess baggage. Yes, customers' demographic is skewed younger, but young people love to read. There is a strong, growing book community. And I know young people, I experienced this even before I closed my CD store with the start of the vinyl resurgence. There is a big cohort of that generation that likes those older vintage technologies, if you want to call them that. They like traditional books versus ebooks. My daughter is one of those. She's 34, about to be 35, but she has an e-reader, but she reads primarily physical books. That's just what she prefers. SimilarWeb says 39% male, 60% female, ages 25 to 34. So it's a little bit older than what the question was, which was 18 to 25. But yeah, it's definitely skews younger, I'm sure, probably considerably than Etsy and certainly eBay, which I think is probably skews the oldest. Young people would buy books for aesthetics like dark academia. That is interesting because I don't sell books and I don't price books based on, this is an area where we talked about with the wholesale books. So if I've got a bunch of low value $1 or $2 books and they all have green cloth covers or black cloth covers or whatever it is, from an aesthetic point, you could lot those up as decorative pieces rather than selling them as books. And that's probably something I need to get better at. I sell them as books. I value them based on their actual value as a book, not as a potentially decorative or accessory type item. And that would definitely be a place where maybe some of those cheaper books might make sense. everywhere, but certainly on a site like Depop or even Mercari. It would be hard to justify on eBay because the fee structure, again, if I'm paying 14, 18% plus 30 cents, if I'm trying to sell a book for a buck or two, it doesn't make sense. So you'd really have to build a lot. Liz says, sorry, the largest age group is 25 to 34. Yes, much younger than eBay. Yeah, I'm probably the demographic of eBay, the Huggins 60 crowd over there that got into, to be fair, online purchasing and auctions when it first came out. I've been selling on and off on eBay since 2000, so real close to the actual start of eBay. It's been a long, long time over there for me. Den Decor Depot, are you running the auto delist on List Perfectly? I am not. When I started using List Perfectly, I was essentially using it just to bulk list and cross list. So I wasn't using their catalog, and I'm probably unjustifiably hesitant to now switch everything into their catalog. Again, we talk about how you can develop your own business plan. I've got a workflow now that works for me in terms of how I put those things into these platforms and how I take them out and how I pick the item once it's sold. So I would be super hesitant to do that, but I absolutely understand where it's a terrific tool and it's an option on List Perfectly that I am absolutely not taking advantage of as I should. But it's just not something that I'm doing, and probably not something that I foresee myself doing, at least in the near future. I'm going to take a quick pause to get another bit of H2O here. So y'all really got me thinking about Depop now. I am definitely going to have to go have a look over there at what's going on and what kind of books are there and kind of what the price ranges is. Like I talked about a couple of weeks ago, when I do my initial research, I look at kind of the market. I look at eBay. I may look at Amazon. I look at Abe Books, and I value the book based on its value as a book. I pretty much stop at that point, and I price that item the same across all the platforms. So if it's a $19.99 book, it goes to Etsy for $19.99, and it goes to Mercari for whatever, $19.99 plus whatever I think it's going to cost to ship, because I do free shipping over there to do ship on my own. So I will have to look at Depop and see how books are being valued there to make sure that it makes sense. But it's definitely something I'm going to have to take a look at. Den Decor, I'm shopping different cross listers for Q4, and I need more than just Etsy and eBay. Yeah, I use, like I said, List Perfectly. Liz O'Kane, I believe you use Vindu, if I'm not mistaken. I have not looked into that, so I don't have any comparison. I know List Perfectly has eBay, Etsy, Poshmark, Mercari, Kitizen. Will allow you to do Shopify and a couple of others. It's pretty comprehensive. Again, Depop, I think, is on there. So there are some different ones. Excess Baggage, I know you're on Vindu as well. It would be a little work to switch, but they have a great product and a program for high volume sellers. Again, I may have to look into that. Gosh, you guys are making me work today. I've not looked into Vindu at all. When I first started looking into cross-listing, List Perfectly was the first one that I saw, and it worked with the platforms that I needed to work with, and it was reasonably priced. I did the quick little trial, and it worked perfectly well for what I was trying to do, and I just stuck with it. So I may have to look into Vindu as well. Thank you, Annette and Liz. We're at the 1 hour mark. Let's go one more time around the house. If anybody has anything that they would like to discuss excess baggage, I will happily answer questions on Vindu. If you want to do a future show on this topic, I will mark that on the calendar. We need to do that. But just for the record, I don't know if we've talked about this, but the episode that you and I did, the podcast that Excess Baggage and I did, it's probably been a year and a half or longer ago now, is my number one listened to podcast. It's not my number one video on YouTube, but it is the number one show from my podcast. So thank you. Saw Vendu has 450-ish program that looks really good. It's a one-time fee. That would be outstanding because that's like 10 months worth of, not even 10 months of worth of what I'm paying over at List Perfectly. And thank you, and thank you as always to everybody who came out at some point today and spent a little time here, and for everyone participating in the chat. I really, like I said last week, I absolutely appreciate this hour and change that we get to spend together, bouncing ideas off of each other and having like an actual discussion. Try out Depop for 1 to 2 months as a test. It's what I'm doing. 3-month trial. There you go. You've been there for a while now. How's it working out? Excess baggage with some smiley faces. At least that's what they look like. I'm on a little 10-inch screen on my teleprompter here. I switched 2 years ago. It just works for me. I assume you're talking about Vendu there. Net, thank you. Love following excess baggage. Yeah, I love her to death. Not to get whatever. She sells in an area I have no knowledge of whatsoever. It's an area I do not sell in. I'm not going to sell in, but I love her content over on Instagram. It's so interesting to watch. And I do that with a lot of people. I follow a lot of sellers and YouTubers that are not selling directly in my category. I follow My Reseller Treasure, who does like old toys and old Barbies and stuff like that. And I just find it fascinating. It doesn't necessarily convince me that I want to go into those categories, but I find that stuff, I find the way that so many people, I talk about this all the time, find a way to make reselling work for them, to find a way to make whatever their interest, their passion, their craft, their hobby, their profession, turn into an actual legitimate business like Annette at Excess Baggage did, and use these tools and use these platforms to their own benefit. I know we talk, half this episode was slagging on platforms for making mistakes and having issues, but at the end of the day, they allow us to do something that you couldn't have done 30 years ago. When I graduated college, longer than 30 years ago, but in any case, this wasn't a thing. You could not do this. And we are so blessed with this opportunity that these platforms give us. And yes, I know they have their issues. And yes, I know they charge us through the nose for the privilege. But my goodness, what a terrific way to make a living. And what a great opportunity we all have. So I'll get off my soapbox again, but I think it's amazing. Excess baggage. Aw, shucks. Liz O'Kane, I listed 200 there in June and sold 8 items. I love following sellers that talk about other categories. I learn a lot. You can absolutely. I learn things all the time from people that don't sell in my categories, that don't sell, like today, even, for instance. I would never have dreamed that people were selling books on Depop. Never would have occurred to me. I see it in my List Perfectly screen all the time. Depop. I never gave it a thought. And now here we are, and I'm going to spend the afternoon researching Depop. I need to start making content. That's one of the things I hope we get to talk about tonight, actually, on the Hump Day Hangout. So again, if you're not doing anything tonight, find the Hump Day Hangout over on Fundamentals channel. I hope we get into a conversation about content creation and the fact that you just kind of need to get started. If it's something you want to do, you can start with your phone. You don't need, I've got a ridiculous amount of equipment here because I'm a gadget guy. I like fooling with the tools. I've got, a Rodecaster and a Stream Deck and a teleprompter, and I got all this stuff. It's completely unnecessary to do what we're doing here, but I love it. But you can absolutely do this with very, very little upfront expense, and you can reach a ton of people. Bruce Johnson, glad to catch you this morning in Cali. Thank you for all your content. Been listening for years. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. eBay fees are high, but I keep selling what I can while including the higher cost of selling in the final cost. And then that's kind of what you have to do. You've got to, to be fair, I do that more on the buy side probably than the sell side. When I'm outsourcing, let's take an example of a book that is worth $20 retail. That book is worth $20 retail, whether I'm paying 5% in fees or 25% in fees. It's still only worth X amount. So if I want to make more profit on that item, we have to do it on the front end. The money is made on the buy, not on the sell, because a retail buyer is only going to pay what the item's worth. So that's kind of how I approach it. When I'm out looking for books, I go to an estate sale and they're charging $5 or $8 for normal hardcovers that are going to sell in the kind of $14 to $20 range. I have to pass on those, even though they're probably would make good inventory, because you can't make the profit make sense when you start adding in all of the fees. Den Decor, I have a bunch of videos banked to start, but I just have to do it. Absolutely. You gotta, just as, what's his name? The guy that does one of the media shows on YouTube. You just have to press record. You literally just have to start. Your first ones are, I go back and look at my first videos and man, they're cringy. They're not very good. They're going to be awkward and uncomfortable, and you're going to wonder why you're even doing what you're doing. But I promise you, if you get through that phase, you will get more and more comfortable behind a camera, behind a microphone, with the kind of things you want to talk about. And it will, it's so rewarding. Like when I get a comment that somebody says, either here in the chat or on a video or a podcast that I do, that says, "Thank you so much. I learned something today that I didn't know before." That is so rewarding. That's why I do this. I'm never going to be, a silver play button, 100,000 subscriber, but if I can reach one person an episode and give them a tip or a tool or a piece of information that they didn't have before that will help them in their business, that to me is what success looks like. So you can take what you want from that. Media Picker, caught the last part of this. I mentioned you earlier, so you'll want to go back and find yourself in this episode. Can you please put a link for where you're going to be? It is on YouTube. He has not actually sent me the link yet. I will put it in, once I get it, I will put it in the comments section for this show. I'll pin it as a comment so that you can go back and find it if you want to do that. I should have it shortly. For whatever reason, they haven't sent it to me yet. So Media Picker, started my channel in February, and I'm just now starting to get a little comfortable in front of the camera. Absolutely. It is. I reckon it to like giving class presentations when you were in high school. Getting up in front of a room full of people and presenting your report or talking about your thing is, for most people, super, super uncomfortable. For me, this camera gave a little bit of a barrier. I know I'm talking to you and I'm trying to, engage with you, but the camera kind of gave me that comfort zone of the 1,000 people that are watching this video are not in my front yard watching me standing on my porch trying to do this, if that makes sense. So it definitely takes some getting used to. Link for the Hump Day Hangout. The link did not appear. I don't think you can put links in if you're not like an admin, but again, I will go back and do that. Kristen Everyone Anderson, I think is Christine. It's hard. Again, I'm on a small teleprompter here. Hi from Madison, Wisconsin. I've been watching for a while and happy to catch a live. Thank you. Thanks again for coming out. Busy Girl sounds good. Thank you. And I assume, again, that means about the link. So I will link to that again in the comments section as soon as we get out of here. With that, I think it's time to wrap this up. We're a little over an hour. As always, like I said, I appreciate everybody who came out today to spend a little bit of time. There we go. You don't have to picture everyone in their underwear with the camera. Absolutely, which is great. Again, thank you to everyone who came out and spent a little time. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Thank you to the people who have signed up for memberships over the last couple of months. I absolutely appreciate each and every one of you and every time you come out. And with that, my friends, it's time to sell. Hopefully we see you tonight. You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.